Yeah. Okay, cool. So I now that Jordan says compose is ready, I want to talk about all the bad things about compose. But it's actually not too bad. But essentially we're like at my work, we're probably 30% converted to compose. I do think it's production ready. I'm just going to list out all the problems and the ways to work around them. I'm probably not going to focus too much on working around them because we have a limited amount of time and I can talk all day. But let me set a timer for myself too. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the lessons learned. So one thing I did at my work was I actually set a part of a process, because compose is pretty new, that anything that we found that was problematic, we would report a bug rather than just kind of ignore the problem or not fully understand the problem or not understand what is the way that we actually want to build this. So what we do is we actually, this is a place to report any issues you have with compose. So it's also a good place, obviously, to search for issues. And there's a bunch of them. So in the great thing about them is Google has been pretty good about responding to them or other people. So if you post something in there and you're completely wrong, they can point you to the correct way to implement this, and that's it's not a true bug or whatever. It's just a great way to solve a problem. Another place that we commonly do at my work is I also ask them to look in the Kotlin Slack. So there's a compose room in Kotlin Slack that is really useful for searching for compose issues. So I generally require everybody to search in there before they post into the issue tracker, or search in the issue tracker if they can't find it. But a lot of things are posted in the Kotlin Slack. It's super useful. You find a lot of good information in there. Good for your research for when you actually have to create an issue. But what I'm gonna go through here is every single issue that we found, and kind of quickly go through it. And not really going to focus so much on the workarounds. Generally, the workarounds are inside the issue, but every single thing we kind of found. And I definitely recommend everybody to do this because it's really useful for the Android community to solve the problems and communicate problems and work towards addressing problems. And also afterwards, I'm going to share these slides. So if you agree with these or you've run into any of these, +1 these, will increase its likelihood to get resolved. But I'm going to kind of skim through these real quick. So sorry, I'm not going to put a whole lot of details. And if you don't know Android, it's going to be kind of go over your head a little bit. But one thing is the alert dialog in Android is not scrollable. It's a bug. It's reported on here. The workaround is to hack around and use this button slot instead of actually the title and the text. And essentially what you do is you throw a scroll view in there. It works. We're using that in our app. But otherwise, if you have long content in your alert dialogues, it's going to be cut off. That's the issue for that. But yeah, then the next one is, this is not actually a bug. So if you use a card and you use the wrong constructor, or since it's a function, I guess, wrong function, it won't actually do the ripple right. So we reported an issue. They said it's not a bug, and you have to use this other function inside of it, which has unclick. So if you don't use this, you're doing it wrong, and you have unclick. It actually, if you look at the source code, it specifically says if you're using this, don't use unclick. But notice the weird thing about compose is everywhere else in compose, you actually use the click modifier, which same thing kind of exists in SOAP UI, which is interesting, kind of a modifier system, but you can't use that with cards. You have to use this onclick function. It's a little weird backwards, but just is something that everybody's going to probably run into. What?
Either we can interrupt or not.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, it's similar with the the alignment. Modifiers have, you can do alignment on modifier, but also some proposals have like horizontal arrangement or horizontal alignment or whatever.
I think that's actually different because those are the alignment and the modifier is alignment within the parent. The alignment inside of the component is to align within the component.
Oh, okay.
So it makes sense with that. And it's a little weird because we can talk about it afterwards, but yeah, like there's specific reasons for that. But this one, I feel like this is a problem. And the reason why this exists is because you can't inspect inside a modifier to identify it has unclick to change the way that this works. The issue is actually kind of interesting. I don't have enough time to talk about it, but if you use a surface you have to like wrap your views to do the ripple right. That's what they did there. So scrollable tabs don't follow the material design spec. So the workaround here, and it's very minor things, but it just didn't match what we had before. So if you either use a regular tab or you manually implement corrections, what we decided to do is just do a tab. I mean, the way it works right now is not bad. It just doesn't follow material design spec.
PLDR in the spec? Like, what is it?
It doesn't, when you click on something, it will scroll it into the center. That's not the way the old one did. Is it actually only scrolled it in the center when it was off the screen? The second thing is there's this like underline bar, and this underline bar, if you there's no way to say fill the screen with it. So the underline bar, you have to hide it. It's kind of hacky. It's kind of clunky. So this scroll tab doesn't work that well, but you know, there's workarounds for everything. There's quite a few elevation issues that are all related to the same thing. And what it is if you have a lazy row or a lazy column, which is like recycle overview, or I think in iOS it's called like a lazy VSAC. I don't know exactly what it's called. It's some sort of lazy version of a VSAC. Basically, if you have elevation, which is like when it makes something taller and appears above and has a shadow below it, that doesn't work correctly because like it gets clipped off. So essentially the workaround for this is to add padding within your lazy row or column because the elevation will cut it off. And also, if you're interested in this, read the article. The article kind of explain it. People will be discussing it. And then another one is if you, let me see what the other one. Oh, there's an overscroll effect in Compose. So if you scroll left and right, basically it busts the padding and you have to add padding to it. I'm like, don't have much time, so I want to go a little quicker. Missing features. So there's something called a slider label, not supported. The workaround for that is we use the Android view with the actual layout slider. We can talk about that afterwards if anybody wants to talk about that. There's no such thing as Linkify here, so you have to manually implement that. There's no such thing as HTML text or span text. There's an issue for that. Search bar is in the material design spec in the top bar. It's not supported directly, so you have to build your own. That's a ticket for that. Date picker, time picker, date time picker is not supported. You have to build it yourself. Nested scrolling is not supported, so that's something to keep in mind. All these things are not supported currently. There's a ton of text field issues. So your keyboard does not automatically dismiss when you press done. Extract UI, which is a full screen keyboard, is not supported on Compose yet. There's multiple keyboard types that are not supported, like dates, I think. I know a bunch of them aren't supported. Also, as you're typing, let's say if you did a virtual keyboard and you type with the keyboard being numeric, it'll actually allow you to type in whatever you want. That's something that you have to manually filter. There's a bug for that. Oh, this is a very, very popular issue. Number one issue with text fields is you can't put them in lazy columns or lazy rows. You have to put them in a scrollable column, which they just recently fixed. So that is a big problem that everybody's going to run into. This is like the biggest issue with text fields. Another bug is if you are typing, it does not keep your cursor in focus. There's no support for min line, max lines, or lines. That's to define how many lines something is. There's a modifier you can use for that, which is the workaround there. There's tons of talkback issues. Which is Talkback. I work at a healthcare app which has to support ADA. There's tons of issues. I'm not gonna have time to dig in all these. These are the major issues. This is like, I'm pushing really hard for these because these make your app all not accessible. It's not specific to Compose. There's like three main issues. The main issue is that if you are, and it all pertains to content outside of your screen not being read correctly. So if you have a card and part of that card is outside of the scroll view and you're telling Talkback to read it, it doesn't read at all. It won't read what's outside the screen. Also, it won't navigate directly to stuff if stuff is not Talkback focusable. We can talk about that later. And then go go back to the screen that has the same spot. Oh, also there's a bug that if you go between screens, and you have a button in the same spot between two screens, it'll actually start there on the next screen. It's kind of hard to explain, but these are really big issues that every single Android app has that are very, very problematic. Actually, I reported 2 of these issues, so I'm kind of proud of myself for reporting these issues. But these are 3 issues with Compose. One's just more of, I think something's painful to use. One is really bad placeholders within text fields, break talkback, switch with toggleables, does not work correct with toggleable dropdowns, ADA doesn't work right. Well, we're still researching. I haven't tried a look on that. That's my question. But yeah, I went through this really quick. I'm gonna post the slides, but all those things are super useful. The ADA issues are probably not as important to some people, but like overall, except for the ADA issues, there's workarounds for everything. But some of the ADA issues are just kind of broken, and there's nothing you can really do about it. Any questions anybody has for me? Maybe.
Wow. So it sounds, thanks. That was really helpful. I guess Swift UI is not so far behind as I thought.
I mean, I think if somebody did a similar situation for Swift UI, I think the list would be a lot worse. I don't know.
At least you can report the bugs.
Yeah, and also you can report the bugs. You can see status of bugs. Other people.
Yeah, that's really nice.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh.
Literally all those bugs, you can look and get responses from Google engineers and have collaboration, which is not something that exists in the Apple space. I think if you have transparency, it will make it seem worse, but in the end, it's gonna improve the platform quite a bit. So I don't think I think Swift UI actually has a lot less components than Android does, in my understanding. So like, and then also Swift UI doesn't have to follow to like a material UI spec. So like Android also has 2 levels of components as well. So it's like a lot more complicated. But I think in like a year or 2, Compose is going to be like insane. Like it's going to be nuts, and like everything's going to be handed to you. The benefit of reporting all these bugs is hopefully they, fix them all in a year or 2, or at least the bigger ones. Yeah.
That's all.
Now you were just reporting those bugs on Android, right? So like, yeah, like Compose supports desktop and web too.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm sure desktop and web probably have lots and lots of bugs. Android's their baby, so that has the least amount of bugs.
Mhm.
But yeah, we don't support anything other than.
No, it's still super cool. I'm like looking at the Compose repo, like Apple doesn't do that for us. So we get like spoon fed. Here's the new OS update. Let us know if anything's not working. But yeah, it's
Compose repo is also on GitHub, which is also a +1 from you guys. So you can't see the source, from my understanding. Oh, maybe Swift UI you can. I don't know. I don't. Can you?
we can only see the interface. We cannot see the implementation. So we would see like just the definition and then anything inside of it, but no declaration bodies.
The great thing about Android is I can say, also the cool thing is like essentially one of my roles is like, what does it work with the legacy UI system and how does it work with the new UI system? And then if there's a deficit, that supports me in reporting bugs. And then also I can say, hey, I want this to work exactly the way the layout system works. And then people just inspect the code of that and then make it work the same way, which is not something that Swift UI you'd have to like kind of test it. Like you can't see like maybe the regular expression that something uses underneath the hood to validate that something is valid or something like that. But yeah, this is like 30%, and I would say we did all the harder compose things. So I think like after we're kind of doing all of the advanced components. Our app uses a lot of every component that's built into material, basically.
Did you use like companies for like any of the components?
Yes. we use the flow thing for the alert dialog, but Accompanist has its some things, and then Compose has some things. So we did have to use Accompanist for some things. And like, by the way, for people that don't know Accompanist, what it is it's Compose is like kind of test area. That's how they sell it. So eventually everything it's another GitHub repo. Eventually everything in there will be merged into Compose after they feel like it's kind of flushed out. That's kind of the rule. So it's like another Google repo that you can use for Compose. And we had to use that for certain things like paging and stuff like that is not available in Compose directly.
Please. I didn't know.
Your laptop might be almost out of power, by the way. I don't know if you have that plugged in.
I don't have it plugged in. I'm at what, 17%? That'll be enough to finish any questions.
That'll be enough to see us out. Hey, David, can you speak a little bit about using Compose and Swing, or using Compose in like just normal Android? Like for iOS, they added like an intermediate layer that you have to kind of merge them two together, and it's not the best. How does Android and Compose handle that?
You're talking about like using Compose within like a screen? Like how do you integrate that?
Yeah, I don't know what I'm asking. Like using a Compose in like before Compose, like
Yeah.
like your old app, and now you add a new Compose, and you want to put an old app activity inside of that Compose.
Yeah,
screen.
it's the recommended way is, so Android has historically had a single activity structure. So basically an activity is like, I don't know what equivalent to like that'd be like the topmost view controller. But then like we have this concept of fragments, which a fragment is a per screen thing. So essentially what you do is on a fragment, you would say this inside of the fragment on the create, you would say, hey, this is Compose, and use the Compose function, and then it would just lay out with Compose. And generally you do the migration at a screen level, but you can do it at a component level. And also you can use the legacy stuff, or not legacy stuff, but the layout stuff directly inside Compose. So like I gave an example of the workaround for one bug. One bug is I basically made it so in Compose we wrapped all of our sliders use the layout slider, and what you do is you just there's this, I think it's a function, it's called Android view, and then inside of that you actually instantiate the slider, which is from the layout, and you can just use it directly in Compose as well. So you could use the components that aren't fully converted over. You can do that, and we only needed to do that at my work for text and for slider. So text doesn't support HTML, and we need text to support HTML, and then slider, we need it because of the label is not supported. I think those are our only two instances of using Android View.
We did the same thing with text and HTML.
Yeah, I reported a bug in the list that they should support that. So I did not find anybody else to report it. So if I'm wrong, they'll mark it as a duplicate, but.
No, that's
Cool.
super cool.
I will keep my mic on.